All right. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We are so glad that you are back with us to kick off our final community of practice. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Dr. Quinn Galloway Salazar. I serve as the Senior Vice President of Engagement and Transformation for PsychArmor, and I am so thrilled to be joined by two of my most favorite people on the face of this planet. I'm probably being super biased, but it is such the truth that I get to jump in and join these two fabulous humans to really bring home this COP series. If you have joined us for the last three, you are in for a treat for this final one. Just to let you all know the flow of this final one, we are really going to spend some time in reflection, focusing on how we started at the beginning of the month, where we are now, and what we hope for the future. And so I am going to play the sideline person and let my two friends really jump in and share what they hope for the future, what inclusivity looks like, what are strategies that you can incorporate today to make LGBTQIA veterans feel more inclusive in your care environments. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to my first friend, who many of you may not have met thus far. So Erica, if you can jump on and introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, thank you. What a great introduction. So cool. Lindsay and I have not met, I don't think, before. So this will be a really cool conversation. I've really been following you, Lindsay, through your career and all the awesome stuff that you've done. So I'm excited to have a chat. And Quinn, just love you to death, and all of the things that you've done for us and for our agency and for me and just your friendship. So Erica Hoover, I am a Navy veteran. I serve right now as the Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Manager at the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. I served for 4 years in the Navy. The first 2 years were during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the second two were after it was repealed. Went through a whole lot of stuff during that time period and started doing work in the veteran space to kind of continue my service and give back and to kind of be the person that I always needed in my state. I grew up in a really rural town, and I really started hitting the ground running about 9 years ago at the agency and putting forward a lot of like advocacy series and resources and really trying to reach out to LGBTQ plus veterans in the state of Michigan. So that's a pretty short intro, but that's who I am. That's where I'm coming from. Born and raised in Michigan, traveled the world, and I'm back home now. So
Erica, thank you. LC.
I'm trying to play with pins at the same time. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm Lindsay Church. Most of you all have probably at this point attended one of the sessions. I am the executive director and co-founder of Minority Veterans of America. I also served in the Navy from 2008 to 2012. I also served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, prior trans bans, and identify as a trans non-binary veteran. I use VA. I work on a lot of suicide prevention, mental health, and health equity issues, and so really excited about this series and the topics that we've touched on so far, and excited to meet you, Erica. I actually have seen your name quite a few times in many of the like suicide, like Governor's Challenge, suicide prevention stuff. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you both. So just getting those introductions underway. Once again, welcome if anyone else has joined since we started. In this space, we want to create a warm and inviting virtual experience for you all, where all voices in the chat or just, between LC, Erica, and myself are heard. We want to be extremely mindful of language And if you've joined us so far, you know that we have what's called a prime directive. And within that prime directive, it basically states, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and ability, the resources available, and the situation at hand. We are in a time in the world where, quite honest, I tell the team every single day, just do your best and remember humanity first. Be a kind human. Show up for others in ways that maybe they haven't experienced before. So in this place, if we can ensure we're doing that, that would be wonderful. So I'm going to get us kicked off, right? And I'm going to just take this conversation back a bit. And I think it's so powerful, and I'm getting chills a little bit, that we're even here because I'm going to go back to maybe 2020, Elsie. It was during the pandemic. And at that time, I was a part of the Governor's Challenge team. And I remember we were having every event where we focused on suicide prevention. We had a veteran come in to speak about their lived experience because we wanted to always set the tone with the why, right? Why we're doing this work, why suicide prevention matters as it relates to service members, veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. And I remember we had a bunch of male veterans, over the course of time, share their stories. And Elsie and I had became fast friends at that point of time. And I remember going to my leadership and saying, hey, we are hearing a multitude of lived experiences from veterans, but we're not talking about the lived experiences of LGBTQIA veterans. And we need to make sure that they also feel seen, heard, mattered in this space. And so the idea was, okay, Quinn, since you're bringing this to us, who are you going to bring to the center virtual stage? And of course, I already had LC in mind. And that very first time we brought LC to the center stage, it changed the way many states looked at suicide prevention for the LGBTQIA community. And if I remember right, Elsie, like the team created this whole word cloud for you of all the things the different states were saying, because at the time they weren't strategizing how to incorporate strategic actions to their action plans in reducing suicide prevention amongst the community. So here we are many years later, right? And during that time, I also met Erica, and Erica's state of Michigan was saying we need to tackle what women veterans are experiencing, LGBTQIA veterans are experiencing, and how can we bring some of this work to the forefront as it relates to suicide prevention. So to come here in this space with both of you today to say that at one time, you were asked to build an extension of a table, right, to the larger table, to now being a part of this table. I want everyone that watches this final episode of this series to realize that many years ago, there was hope shared, right? And whenever I say hope, it's hearing other people's experiences. When Lindsay shared their story on that virtual stage, hope began for LGBTQIA, for the community to be able to say, our lives matter too. And yes, many things have shifted throughout the years, but the truth still remains. We've got to continue this level of hope to ensure stories are shared so that we can take better care of our community when they step foot into our environments. So, with that being said, and knowing where we've been over the last few weeks, Either one of you can take this question. So we've talked about visibility. We talked about what safety looks like. We talked about having that little mouse in our pocket when we're thinking about the importance of pronouns. And we talked a bit about inclusion. But when systems don't change, we know that sometimes intentionally for the worse, when systems don't change, those ideas of inclusivity, safety, visibility, they remain abstract. What are some real world consequences when inclusivity stays performative? And how can we move from performative to action? You are on mute, Elsie.
My headphones. It's a headphone problem. All I was saying was, Erica, you're new here, so you get to go first. That was it. That's all I was saying.
All of that for that.
Truly, truly.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, that's a really big question right off the bat. I think that right now, and I can speak for like my team, right? So we are in a what they call we're a purple state, right? Things feel, depending on who you are, really, 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 really hard, or they or you're kind of in like an oblivion, right? Like you're like, yeah, I'm just moving along because I can, because I have this privilege, because I can get through, because I can go to the doctor, right? I don't have to worry about hiding who I am. And I'm going to use myself as an example. So I'm gay. I have a wife. I've been using the VA since I got out of the Navy in 2013. I also have a lot of baggage from my service. So I was being out processed for don't ask, don't tell. And in the middle of that whole process, it was repealed, and then no one ever talked to me about it again, right? And so I carry a lot of this with me where, one, I couldn't be out while I was in service. I couldn't talk about, I'd always be asked about like my sexual health and my partners, and if I needed to be on birth control, and all of these other things, which was something that like I couldn't talk about because obviously I was not having sex with men. So there was, there's all these pieces that I bring with me now, and then using the VA as a woman that identifies as a woman and that needs care for my woman parts, right? I carry a lot of distrust with lots of doctors because of my experience in the military, and also now because of my experience in the VA. And when you see VA partners in the world wearing a rainbow flag, or for me, this signals I'm a safe space, right? This is why I wear this, so other people know I kind of know what I might be a safe space for you. It doesn't mean that I am a safe space. However, it means that I wear this so you do know that maybe I have some kind of an inkling that I could, that I could be, and that we can maybe have a conversation as you feel me out. So these things are performative, right? We know that in many VAs, they're not allowed to fly a pride flag anymore. Some people have put them in their offices now as a kind of like a, because they want people to know they are a safe space, even though it is against the directives. So I think it's really harmful. One, those policies, I think that I am very leery when I encounter new providers, which I get often in the VA because it's a constant cycle of folks. And sometimes I feel safer going out into community care because I feel that though doctors in community care are more inclusive. And that could be just because of what I carry. It doesn't mean anything against those doctors. It doesn't mean that the VA doctors are bad. It just means that this is what I carry. I carry some trauma with me as I go through the system. And so transparently, I'm incredibly leery every time I go to any doctor's appointment. The questions that they ask me, how they ask me, I get asked almost every single time about my, like if I could be pregnant. I had a hysterectomy last year. I still get asked this every single time. Like it's just a constant, I'm braced all the time for being, even though I'm out, I'm braced all the time for really hard things or to protect myself constantly. So I think that right now, the time that we're in, and not to sound like hopeless or whatever, like I'm gauging a whole lot of things. And just because you have a pride flag or you have something rainbow or something like that, I'm still feeling you out. Like when I interact with folks, for lack of a better terminology. So it takes time to build trust with providers. It takes time to build trust with people that, they need to know a lot of things about you. But also I think that folks should know, like, we're carrying a lot with us as we seek out help in healthcare and therapy or whatever, that looks like. And so that's something that I would definitely add to this conversation based on my personal history.
And we've talked quite a bit about, or like a few times over the last couple of sessions, about what outward allyship can look like, or creating relationship and trust. Like, the actions that we take that signal that we at least care, or that we are in some way affirming, is different than the necessary steps that you have to take to tailor your care, right? The simply wearing a pride pin is great. It's like Lisa, I mean, I use the VA too, and I've, watched my healthcare get politicized very intensely over the last, specifically few months, but over the last few years, we've been watching, attempts to politicize by basic healthcare pretty regularly. And, those pins do mean a lot. When it comes to providers in the community, there's a bigger step that you can take, because I think, with the systems that are like VA DoD, like there has always been a mistrust, because there's always been persecution, right? There's persecution attached to those government systems, which means that when we go to those care settings, we're already on edge, no matter if you're the best provider in the world. If I saw you in the community, I'd probably be thinking a whole lot different things. But that building itself, the system of care itself, has been not just politicized, but turned into a weapon against many of us. And so having that unique understanding and tailoring care in stride with that, like that's the steps that we have to be taking. The performative nature of like pins, flags, signs that say we see you is the first step. And like, I guess I call it learning the lingo, right? So I was thinking about analogies that I could make this morning about how inclusivity and like performative inclusivity is different than what we need to actually do to show support. So many people have kids, like I think about the idea of teenagers, right? Simply learning your teenager's language means that like you've studied, or you've, you've read Urban Dictionary enough, you watched enough TikTok videos that you can like throw down with them on the same lingo. But when it comes to actually supporting them, it's different, right? That like, just because I can say, I don't know, my kid's one, but like, just because I can use certain terms and I know how to say, certain, like somebody's got Riz, like that doesn't mean that I know what's going on, or that you're being cyberbullied, and then I need to be able to think about that in a different way. So like extending that net beyond lingo, which is like the things that we do to talk to people or create those alliances with people, and taking that into action, is the step that's imperative for us to not just go to the care settings and like think that we might be okay, but to actually keep coming back. Retention is all about, we want to retain clients, we want to retain patients, and retention is truly all about how do we create that trust, and how do we ensure that that trust is durable. Like the trust that we create with these pins is paper thin, but the trust that we create over years of having intentional conversations, correction when you're wrong, like learning about the person, that's the strong like trust connections that we need, that go well beyond that paper thin like performance that we do to signal that we're safe.
I love that. In listening to both of you all and thinking about how important it is to build trust and rapport as we're having these conversations with providers, I think it's so imperative that, yes, we have these performative pieces, but how life-changing putting your clipboard down and meeting a person right where they are can be in building that rapport, being able to keep that retention of that patient and also their loved ones, right? Like if, you know, if your spouse, if either of your spouses knew that you weren't getting the care that you deserved, that retention rate would go down for sure, right? So being in a place where you can put that clipboard down, meet that veteran where they are, understanding one, if they were impacted by don't ask, don't tell, what's some of that residual, right? That may be left from that. And I think that's a part of learning the lingo too, is learning the historical facts that are being brought to you that that person experienced as well. Um, so when we're thinking about these intentional conversations and putting down your clipboard, where providers can start to become allies, how do we build this allyship knowing that in many medical settings, it's high pressure environments? What are just some really, simple practices providers can do to make you feel more welcomed, even if they're in a setting where lots is going on, but making you feel that you're welcome, um, that they are meeting you where you are, and that they're there to provide you the best care that matters to you, right? Not specifically focused on what's the matter with you per se, but what's the type of care that matters to you. Let's play ping pong, y'all.
Lindsay, you want to go?
You came off mute at first, so anyway.
All right.
Tag your it again, Erica.
All right. So I would say I had a provider once, and these are little things, and I think this is just on a human level, wrote lots of notes about just me as a human. I went in and they asked um, they asked me about like my dog, right? My dog's name, or just like little things that make you feel like, oh, you listened, like you paid attention. I would say listen to your patients and believe your patients and write down, they go by they, them, they go by she, her. This is their preferred name. I mean, we do this all the time, right? Like Robert may want to be called Bob. Like we don't have a problem with that. So why do we have a problem with, any other time that somebody wants to be called something different? And so I would say like those are really important things to remember, and those are really important things to review before you see your patient, because I've been asked the same questions over and over and over again, and it makes you feel like, one, nobody cares. Two, you get, how's your husband? Well, I don't have one, again for the 35th time that I've seen you, things like that. And then you're on the defense, and then it makes you not want to like interact with that provider again. And so people just want to feel cared for when they come in to see their doctor. So and I would say, in high pressure environments, like those things really matter. Practice using language, like do trainings like this, so it becomes something that is you're often using. That's something that just, it's not something that you have to think about all the time, but it's a normal part of how you're interacting with people.
Absolutely.
I'll start with in high pressure environments, don't throw your inclusivity out. Just because things get busy, they get hectic, you're being asked to do so many more things than are humanly possible. And I recognize that healthcare providers in the last, however, like throughout history, but also more heightened since the pandemic, have been called to do a lot of things and a lot more than they're humanly capable of. I'm also showing up as one of one. So what I know about what your experience is my one experience that I have with you. So thinking through like how you might impact that patient, either my goal is always to impact people positively, but if I leave no mark at all, that's also doing a good job. So like I'm non-binary, I navigate the world, and literally I'm coming out every single day, multiple times a day. Hi, I'm Lindsay. I use they them pronouns. I'm not binary. Literally, I have to tell the entire world every single day who I am. having a doctor that cares enough to learn that, to really recognize it, to put it in my charts, even when it potentially causes like, disruptions to their career, because, so even thinking through the, VA providers are not even allowed to use they, them pronouns, but some of them are still doing it. Showing those acts of resistance, even when it's hard. I think through like crisis care, correct? Like thinking through like emergency rooms, right? Well, emergency rooms, I think, are like some of the most high intense places you can live and like be in the entire world. And if I'm in the emergency room, I'm there because things have gotten really bad. And you shouldn't walk away from a care setting that has such high pressure moments, because that person's experiences can be life and death. And if you think of it in any other way, if my last experience in my life is being misgendered or treated poorly or being ignored and, dismissed in this life, like that's what I'm walking away from, like that's what will leave me forever. And that's like a, extreme example, but some of these care settings are truly critical. And, being more affirming in those moments is like what we should be doing, instead of throwing our inclusion out the window because we have high intensity moments. And so, I think it's really, to Erica, to your point about like practice, like you will throw your inclusion out the window if this is your first time doing it while you're also being asked to save my life. You will immediately throw it out the window and you will forget, because that's not the time to practice. Recognizing when the time to practice is, like taking that time outside of your everyday life, if this is something you really care about. Go find a queer support group, like go find a community meetup, learn and meet more people that use they, them pronouns, expose yourself in other environments so that in these high pressure moments, it's not the first time. I'm not new here. I do this all the time. This person just happens to tell me they use they, them pronouns, or this person is a veteran that has served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. All of those things, like the practice that you do in the outside world, outside of your healthcare environment, are reinforcing the experiences that you have and what you're able to provide people in your actual care setting. So don't throw your inclusion out the window because it's high pressure, and take time outside of your everyday life to learn more, expose yourself to more, and really be a part of the community that you want to. And that goes across the board, not just for trans people, not just for LGBT, like it's across the board. It's across identity affirmations, right? That's not just, women benefit from this as well, understanding the unique experiences of women veterans, racial minorities within the veteran community as well. Like understanding and exposing yourself to more will make it so that when those moments come, it's easier to navigate.
Yeah. And don't be weird. How about let's, I mean, listen, y'all, and I'm gonna say y'all, I live in Georgia, so please forgive me. Don't be weird. Truly, right? At the end of the day, everyone's people. And so looking at don't be weird as the golden rule, then I'm going to say dot, dot, dot. Then Lindsay, I want you to fill in the blank. What does that mean when you hear don't be weird? And then
I don't,
Erica, same for you.
it's not don't be weird, because I actually think we should all be weird, but don't make it weird. How about that? I'm weird as hell.
Let's do that.
I'm
I'm
like,
here for
oh,
that.
I actually really embrace the weird, but don't make it weird. My golden rule about everything, because people do mess up pronouns all the time, is don't make it weird. Don't go out of your, like, recognize that mistakes happen, that you made one, apologize, but move on. Please don't be the person that hangs there for 10 minutes. I think I shared this on a previous session that somebody was, profusely apologizing for misgendering me in a meeting by somebody must have sent her a message after, like in the middle of it, that she had repeatedly misgendered me. And then she went on the line at the very end in front of 15 people to go over the top to tell me she was sorry, and that every time she sees me, she just sees a really pretty woman, and like just made it so exceptionally strange and weird that like I actually wish that she had never recognized that she did anything wrong, because it would have made it better. So like when you make mistakes, people do it all the time. I actually misgender myself sometimes, like answering the phone, somebody like, I'm looking for Lindsay, and I'm like, this is her. Wait, this is them. Kidding. Like it happens. And you don't have to go above and beyond saying I'm really sorry. The above and beyond actually comes independent of that moment. The above and beyond goes into practicing. It's making sure that what you do in the future is more in line with what you're supposed to doing, and like acting, when you know better, do better. That's where you can go above and beyond. You can spend time practicing, you can spend time learning, you can do all of these things and really work towards a better outcome in the future. But for the love of God, don't hang there and don't make it weird. So that's my golden and platinum.
Yeah.
I can say ditto to that. I lived in Portland for 5 years after the Navy, so we keep it weird in Portland. And yeah, weird is cool. Well, nerds are cool, right? Yeah, don't like. I think that and I think that's something that's really important is you don't hang on your mistake over and over and apologize. I get misgendered as a Mister sometimes because I have short hair and people don't pay attention. I think it's the just pay attention. I mean, we're all humans, right? And we do make mistakes, but the more you linger in that mistake, just prove that you know better, right? And the next time you say, you want to say she, say they. If that person uses they them pronouns, like that's just as simple as that, and that person will know that you made that attempt to that you are consciously thinking of it, and that is something that is important to you, and they'll know that that is important. So, yeah, I think that that's really great advice, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I will say one last thing, and I saw what I taught my mom, or I told my mom in the beginning when she was really struggling with this and like not really make much of an effort, is that I would correct her and she would say I didn't mean to. And my response would always be, I need you to mean to. And it's like really like I need you to be, it's not, like it might be unintentional, but I need you to be intentional until it's second nature. I need you to mean to in these environments where it matters a lot, right? That like if I'm telling you that I'm not being affirmed in the world and my gender identity matters here and it's the only place I can protect it, I need you to mean to. And so like that's what I tell my mom often or tell other people is that even if it's unintentional, I need you to intend to until you get used to it.
I need you to mean to.
I love that.
If our PsychArmor team can capture that, Elsie, that is powerful. And that helps us shift the paradigm in really being intentional with how we show up. It's the most compassionate request that one can make, right? I need you to mean to. Let that linger for a second. That's going to be on a sticky, right? On my desk to be intentional with that. As we're looking at current events that are happening, right? When we all started this work, there were many different initiatives, many different programs, funding. Things just looked a little different than what they do today on June 25th, 2025. I want to be very exact with today because things are changing at rapid paces. And knowing that our audience are not situated within the DoD or VA, what are ways that they can stay abreast to what's happening currently so they know what supports, what resources, what gaps, or even the white spaces for opportunities could be in their practices?
I know this is like very pitchy, but like following some of the organizations doing the work on this is like on social, we put a lot of stuff out. Like I think one of the things about thinking about non-VA providers is knowing what's happening in the VA and what might be pushing people to your desk. For example, I am now exploring my life as insurance. I have community care options, thank you, privatization efforts, but I have options in the care in the community. And there's an underlying reason why I might be leaving the VA. And that is that VA's gutted gender affirming care. It's rolled back discrimination protections. It's made it so that they're trying to make it so you can't even use they them pronouns, even in a setting that it's not being documented. Literally, this is the level of fear that we're experiencing when fleeing the system. So I think understanding what might be pushing people to you beyond geographic distance or your specialty care. If I'm coming to you for primary care, we either have a capacity issue at VA, which we do. We probably shouldn't be firing 80,000 people for it. But we might be capacity, but more than likely, if you see a person like me show up in your clinic, something is wrong at the VA. And so following what might be pushing people to you is really important, and understanding the trends and the undertones. Even when you look at some of the headlines, like here were some headlines last week that came out that VA is going to be, or is allowing in their medical bylaws for, they remove some protections for marriage and or political status. And the underlying is, oh my gosh, they're going to start, you know, they're going to start discriminating against Democrats and unmarried people. Well, actually, that was very much geared towards same-sex couples and trans people. They gutted those protections in gender, like protecting women, and those are very much intended to target us. And so understanding some of the undertones of what's happening within VA and within DoD, DHA, like the agencies that would normally provide our healthcare, especially like I'm 100% total and permanent disability disabled. I should be using VA for my care. But if I'm coming to you, there's a really important reason. So I think following some of the cultural undertones, and if you're, you know, if you're a provider that sees a lot of veterans, or at least a substantial amount of veterans, I think one of the questions that you could ask is like, what brings you here today beyond just what, like, what's your ailment, but like, you know, why did you choose us? Like, so that you understand some of the unique beyond our service trauma, what we're experiencing right now. Because what this experience right now, this moment is highly traumatic. Like, I do this work every day and I walk away just feeling like so scared and so small. And those people, the folks that are fleeing the system now, are coming for a reason because they're scared as well. So asking some of these questions, these more in-depth questions, you know, like put your clipboard down and ask people why they're choosing not to use VA, because that would be less limited. Like it would eliminate a lot for you in order to be able to provide better care and to keep them coming back. Because more than likely, if they're coming to you and you can create a safe environment, you're going to be doing more to potentially save that person's life, because the option to go back to VA isn't going to be there for a long time. You know, the discrimination protections are going to be there, be gone for at a minimum 4 years, if not stay there for, I mean, we watched Don't Ask, Don't Tell stay in place for 20 years because they found a compromise. And if they continue on this path, we might be looking at decades of progress lost. And so truly understanding, why are you here? How can I keep you coming back here? Because I'm going to create a safe environment for you. Having those conversations can change somebody's life.
Powerful.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I would say that also, like we've seen, I've done a bunch of like webinars, things like that. All that stuff has been erased. None of it is out there for VA providers to learn, educate themselves, any of those things that used to exist in the world. And so that's scary. Also, there's a lot going on in the world that makes it scary to be an LGBTQ person in the world. And so to be a safe space that we can come into and not be on edge all the time is really important. We're gauging, we're constantly like worried about who you are, what your political affiliation is, like all of those things, because I'm terrified of how I'm going to be treated, if I'm going to be treated, you know. It's a really hard world, and it is, you know, all of us are in suicide prevention work, being seen for who you are as suicide prevention, being accepted for who you are as suicide prevention. I would also say get to know like your veteran allies, in the state. Like, so get to know the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency and know me, know my team, know folks that are resources for veterans. Know that we're not pushing veterans to the VA if they don't want to go to the VA. And I would say that's the one thing that I would say also is, you know, you can ask people if they're connected to a benefit, and get them connection, so they get like a, you know, their disability payment, like help them through that process. There are people that can help with that, but don't push people to the VA. Don't try to make them go because they're there seeing you for a purpose, for a reason. I also I have full VA care, 100% covered. I also have state health insurance. That's what I use instead of my VA insurance, because of all of the things that are going on. And I'm an advocate. I'm supposed to be the person that is in the middle of VA and veterans and helping people navigate that system. And I have used it, so I can explain how to use it, but I've also had to use community care and all that for my own safety, for my own, just for those purposes. But then I can also help veterans understand that process as well. So it's really important, I think, to know people in your area and get engaged in your veterans coalitions and things like that, so you do understand what's going on. We can't always trust. I mean, most VA employees don't even know what's going on. They don't know if they have a job next week. They don't know. There's so many EOs, that executive orders that have come out, and people are in chaos right now, and don't know. Yeah, just like that article that came out. I got so many inquiries last week about, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? I mean, and then the secretary put out, it's not true. However, a bunch of executive orders say otherwise, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff underlaying in there that's meant to cause chaos. So just understand, like, that's where we're all coming from, and do your best to listen to folks in the community and build allies that you know will help folks, that you can connect to, because it's not, we're all a team, like, in this work, and you're not going to do it all yourself.
Yeah. I love this concept of we're all a team and we're in this together for sure. And being able to meet one another where we are, right? And learning more. And, Erica, you touched on it for a moment. We're aging. So how are we building strategies in our care environments where we're looking at aging veterans in the LGBTQIA community? Last year when we started this project, there was a gentleman that was on our working group, and him and I were having a conversation, and he said, years ago, when you're looking at the aging veteran population, the word queer didn't hold a positive connotation to it, right? So we know that there's already a stigma tied to aging and end of life. But how do we start raising awareness to that for many of those veterans? Don't Ask, Don't Tell was alive, 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 but also in society as a whole, it was alive as well. So how do we make space for that aging population to be able to feel that their providers can be a safe space where they can build that trust and rapport as well? So how are we on the prevention side? Well, how are we on the upstream solution side as we're looking at aging LGBTQIA veterans receiving care? And how are we pushing it towards longevity and being able to live for everyone to live their best lives as well as possible?
So I'll start here with a little bit more in-depth history that Don't Ask, Don't Tell for aging populations was actually a gentler policy. For most folks in what we consider the aging population, Don't Ask, Don't Tell wasn't even around yet. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was the kinder, gentler version of what they got. The policy prior to Don't Ask, Don't Tell was that you're mentally ill. You were everything ranging from incarcerated to kicked out of the military to brutally attacked, if they knew that you're LGBTQ. So I think that looking at the unique, I mean, Erica and I had Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is a whole different environment, but there was no bar on asking, which I still contend that there wasn't one for us either, but nobody ever got in trouble for that. But that people were actually sought out and thrown out. And I think there's a really important traumatic note to that, and understanding that that population of aging folks experienced trauma that not only was like in, I think about like gay Vietnam veterans, and policies prior to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but also coming back to a country that hated you. And so like for so many populations that would be considered aging, there's no solution, and many of them have never gotten care. Their partners never recognize. There's still battles for whether or not some people can be buried in Arlington because they can't, or they can't prove death benefits because they couldn't even get married. Like we've got people experiencing wild, like historical, like disparities and discrimination that we've never and will never as a country admit. So I think recognizing that particular part, plus he laid over things like the AIDS epidemic and the crisis that happened in the United States. Like a lot of people lost their partners and their like spouses that don't actually have those support systems beyond being culturally like unwelcomed. There were also like crises, brutality and all of these things that are all a part of somebody's history. And let me tell you, VA mental health care is not unpacking that with you. And so I think looking at how do we get to those, like stories, because I think the individual, every individual has a different story. And so understanding a person's story, what bags do they bring to the table and what boxes are they trying to pack? And so looking at that. Also looking at tailored solutions because the VA system isn't going to help people that experience some of these discriminatory policies. Maybe in the future we'll get there, but we are not living in that world right now. And how do we leverage outside resources, outside things like VA's veteran homes? Like, I'm sorry, LGBTQ veterans likely aren't going to go there as their first stop. They might go there as their only stop or the only option that they have available. But I don't hear that often. What I hear more often is that tailored solutions for people who are aging that are LGBTQ focused are far more likely to be welcoming and accepting in a place that they can live their lives in dignity. Where do those exist? There are not very many, but where they do exist, we should be using those as resources. Support groups, things like that, that are extra governmental that we can point people to that help to connect those populations. Because one of the other things that was nefarious about the whole thing is that many generations prior to ours, because I think our generation was like, F it, we're going to do this ourselves and create those communities. But I think many generations didn't have the internet. They didn't have a way to connect to each other. We also found each other. Let me just be real. We found each other, but those connections and those communities that are necessary, those vibrant communities that are necessary to support people through aging do not exist. And so figuring out how can we bring people into connected communities, that's how we're gonna create an impact that's not governmental. It's about how do we get aging populations of veterans in with organizations like Minority Vets, right? They're like volunteer programs that they can get into, things that can be affirming to their identity that they may or may not seek out on their own. So recognizing that that generation actually has a lot more baggage than even we do, and we all have a lot of bags from this, but recognizing that those bags are giant luggage.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this one is definitely it's difficult. I think that most of our elders have not prepared for their aging. One, we know this in Michigan, 70% of our veteran population is 65 and older. That is a very it's that's an older population in Michigan that Michigan is not prepared. So I can speak for our state. I know that's very true in many states. We are not prepared for the tsunami of folks that are about to be needing elder care. I would say in conversations, one, a lot of the work is like ask the question, right? You may get somebody in your office you don't know that they're a veteran. You may not know, did they ever serve in the military? Many people won't identify as a veteran. I don't know if you've talked about this previously, but like those are really important conversations that lots of women, many men that weren't in combat, folks that were discharged for Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or before that, based on some of the things they were discharged for. The mental illness thing, a general discharge, and for things that they've done, but they served honorably, carry a lot of shame. Folks carry a lot of shame around their discharge status. And so they will not ever tell you that they served in the military. But if you can build trust and you can get to that, there may be some options where they can get a discharge upgrade, restore the honor of their service. There's so many positive things that can come out of building trust in your relationship with somebody that I tell people all the time, that our organizations in the state, they say we serve veterans regardless of their discharge status. And I said, but do you help them with their discharge status? Like you may be helping them get these services that they need, but the upstream model would be to help them get a discharge upgrade restore the honor of their service, so they're proud to be in those spaces and identify as a veteran again. And they can continue that healing journey and get the benefits, the resources, the things that they've earned and that they deserve. So I would say, that is something that I would leave you all with, is that is the bulk of a lot of the work that we do in suicide prevention, is making sure that people are aware of some of those things. Just those really small, sometimes conversations make a really big impact on people.
External to this work, I know Erica and Elsie, you both know that I'm a death doula and I support veterans through the end of life. And one thing that I share every time I'm able to educate or raise awareness is the fact that for many, uh, there's an acronym, and military veterans, we live on acronyms, right? It's a part of our culture. RUGS. If you all can take this acronym with you: regrets, unfinished business, guilt, and shame. When you open your spaces, you're bringing, yes, the medical knowledge, your expertise to the table, but the level of expertise that you bring as it relates to compassion, to regrets, unfinished business, guilt, shame, and the need to forgive or receive forgiveness is huge as you care for all veterans. And I know we have 9 minutes, and I want to segue into the what ifs. I look at you both, knowing you both so well. And if I could sit for hours and share stories of you both, I would. But without a shadow of a doubt, I know both of you are visionaries. And what I would ask as we get ready to round out not only this session, but once again, this series. What continues to give you both hope? And you could take a minute, a moment, whatever you need, because we want it to be good, to be real good, to be the best that you have to give. Because I promise you, this COP, these 4 sessions are going to almost be like a pebble that you're throwing in the water, and it's going to have a ripple effect that's going to impact a multitude of veterans for generations to come. So, what gives you hope?
That is really hard right now. And that is something that I work really hard to do for my team, is at least put some hope into every day. And so I would say, the thing that gives me hope is that I work with 68 humans in this very small state, or in this very small agency, and an 83 county state, that are beautiful, passionate, they care, they're working really hard to be as inclusive as they possibly can. They're learning, they're growing. I think that at the core, humans mean to do really good, mean well, right? That we mean to do good things, and that there are things out in the world that influence the way that we behave and the way that we speak and the way that we think and all of that. But it gives me hope that when I'm speaking in a rural town in Michigan, that I will get somebody that comes up to me and says, I'm really nervous about how I say this, this, and this, or what does this mean? And I can be a safe place for them to ask those questions so they can go out and do better. And that still exists today. Those things are still happening regardless of the rhetoric, the things that are happening. I know that there are good people in the VA. I know that there are good people in healthcare that want to do really good things, and that that leaves me in a better headspace when you're taking in all the bad, that you know that there are allies in almost every space that want to do better, that care, that have passion, and that really want to serve people. So
I live in 2025 like the rest of us, and it's I've gone through waves of feeling pretty hopeless. I mean, it's really easy to give in to despair in this moment and to believe what they're telling us is the real, and to believe that what they're creating is the real world. I will tell you that I had to rethink what hope is, and like, the idea that the hope is this like delicate flower that lives inside of us, and like it can, we hold it so tight. And I actually think hope is a fire. Like hope is a muscle. It's a like thing that lives inside of us, and we can't continue to think of it as this like flower that if it rains, we're going to lose that hope. Actually, hope is a muscle, and if we flex it every single day and we look around us, we can find pieces of hope and pieces of promise. I have a couple of things that like continue to help me flex that muscle, and one of them is community. The communities that we create, whether it's a community of learning or a community of like-minded individuals or a community of people experiencing the same, barriers or systemic, oppressions, things like that. We create community everywhere we go, and that community is our power everywhere that we turn. Like we, right, MBA, we talk about base building a lot, and like this base of people that are part of our movement, and that base is our like muscle. It's how we flex. Like when we build these communities, we build resilience, and when we build resilience, we build change and the ability for us to change the system. And so I think the communities we create are an act of defiance, and they allow the space for us to believe in the world that we know is possible. So rather than living in the world of impossibles and like, what has been lost and what progress is not possible, we live in the world of possibilities. And we have those reminders and the people that share that pain with us, because when we try to take it on ourselves, we are not capable of it. We share that among 100 arms, we actually are able to hold a whole arm. I also see it in the resistance. I have a link that I'll drop. I think drop to the PsychArmor team and pass it to everybody else. It's an article that came out about the acts of resistance that are happening within the VA system. Basically, people finding ways to push back, even in the system that has been totally telling them that they cannot do any of these things. And so they are quietly mounting their own internal resistance to these policies, and to, some of it is through things like we got a $10,000 donation from providers at a VA facility that are allowing us to create a gender affirming care fund, that allows, stipends to people who might have lost their care. I see it in people, continuing to use the appropriate pronouns, and like the resistance in using they them pronouns, even though they could get fired for it. Like that's the resistance. And that's the like defiance of all of this. And remembering we don't live in their world. We live in our world. And our world doesn't have to look this way. It doesn't have to look dark. It can look vibrant. And that resistance and that defiance is so important. I also like the last thing that I'll leave you all. With is the thing that gives me hope is the individuals doing the impossible in the face of extreme circumstances. When I think about these high pressure environments, when I read that question, I was actually thinking about what we're experiencing politically. Like this high pressure environment is now every single care setting at VA. Like when you get a person like me that walks through your doors, that like people are doing the impossible in the face of extreme circumstances, when they could lose their jobs, when they could lose their licenses, when they can lose, many of the things that they personally need, and they're putting it all on the line. And that like individuals doing the impossible is what gives me hope that the world that we believe in is still possible. Like the day that I forget, or the day that I lose sight of the fact that of the world that I believe is possible, is the day that I stopped flexing my hope muscle. And so I just say to everybody, keep flexing that hope muscle every day. Remember that it's a fire that lives inside of you, and you have to keep using that muscle every single day, or else it atrophies.
Ooh, y'all, that's some powerful insight. and wisdom that you shared today. To everyone that has been on this journey with us, thank you. To Lindsay, to Erica, to Ramon, to Carrie, to Andrea, to Emily, the team at PsychArmor, we thank you so much for making this not just a moment, but really striking a movement to say we can do better, in knowing I need you to mean to. Please take that everywhere you go. Share it with your colleagues. We do that. And when we're intentional, we can save lives. And with that, once again, thank you everyone who has been on this journey with us. These videos will come out to your team. Please feel free to share them, rewatch them, get a notebook, pen, highlighter, take notes. This has been a community of practice / masterclass. Let's do the things to make this world a little bit better, a little bit brighter for those that we can impact change for. And with that, see you all later. Thank you for being in this space.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Pride Month.